What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are reviewing Season 1 of Ahsoka. The first show to give a Clone Wars character a real live action adaptation and also bring lots of Star Wars Rebels characters into the fray as well. And as with a lot of Star Wars content at the moment, I think the result is a very average mixed bag. Unsurprisingly, this show is at its best when it focuses on Ahsoka Tano. When it delves into her relationships, when it delves into her past and her struggles and who she's trying to become in the wake of that. And episode 5 was probably the highlight of the season for obvious reasons because it did just that. But what really shocked me about this show was how little of Ahsoka it felt like we were getting. She had a kind of Gandalf role in... Despite being a very main character, she felt very peripheral and there to bolster the other characters forward. Which brings me on to what was without doubt the weakest part of the show, and that was the transition of the Rebels characters from animation into live action. I honestly can't say if it's the acting or the writing or a combination, but Sabine was a real weak link for me in this show. I found a lot of Sabine's conflicts and kind of rebellious behaviour came across as very infantile and not very compelling. I don't think the kind of emotional motivations were strong enough from the acting or the writing perspective to make Sabine's journey in this feel in any way meaningful. And the fact that Sabine almost felt like the main character of this show was really detrimental to Ahsoka's journey, because if you're going to give Sabine's character the spotlight in a show called Ahsoka, you know, you're already going to be stacked up against it anyway, let alone if you don't make that journey compelling and one you really want to watch, which at no point it was for me. Ezra's appearance was kind of full of personality and charisma, and I really like the actor. Again, I don't think the script does anything with him to make his return feel impactful or emotional or epic. The reunion between Ezra and Sabine fell flat for me because I suppose partly it's because you're seeing two actors you've never seen before inhabit these roles for the first time, but also partly I just didn't buy the relationship or the chemistry. Hera was fine as well. I think it says a lot when I got more of an emotional response seeing C-3PO return than I did seeing any of the Rebels characters adapted into live action, with the exception of maybe Chopper. And I think in a show that dedicated so much screen time to the adaptation of these animation characters into live action, it was detrimental to the overall flow of the show. In the wake of Andor, anytime Star Wars attempts to do politics now, particularly in The Mandalorian or in Ahsoka, it just feels so juvenile and unexplored by comparison. There is no substance to any of the kind of political debate or the political kind of scheming and machinations going on. A lot of the political characters are there for purely performative plot functions, and you just don't feel invested in it at all. For the most part, I think the action was really good. It did feel like there was a real samurai-esque kind of elegance and flow to a lot of the fights in this show, particularly the Baylan Ahsoka fight in episode 4 and episode 7. I was quite impressed with the fight between Ahsoka and Morgan Elsbeth in episode 8 in the finale. However, you know, Morgan Elsbeth is a character no one cares about and who hasn't been given anything to do or any real personality to make her a worthy adversary, so the emotional impact of that fight wasn't there. Anytime Hayden Christensen gets to wield a lightsaber and spin a lightsaber in his hand, there is just such a fluidity, such a grace, and such a general badassery to the flow of his kind of body language that just makes him feel like so much of a natural expert with a lightsaber that none of the other characters really have. I really like the addition of Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati to this kind of storyline. I think their screen presence probably stole the show. Considering how little they actually got to do and how little they got to say, which again was a big fault of the show. Baylan and Shin should have had so much more screen time than they did. But how much of an impact they kind of made with just their kind of facial expressions, their posture. I was so much more convinced, compelled and intrigued by Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll in the few seconds they had on screen than whenever like Sabine or Ezra or Hera was on screen. I think the moral grey dynamic of them being neither Jedi nor Sith really works as well, and being kind of mercenaries with their own agenda. I would have loved to have seen more of their relationship exploited in this show. It certainly would have made for really interesting viewing. So the only other character left to really discuss is Thrawn. And I was worried that they were going to do a Moff Gideon in Mando Season 3, which was kind of bring him back for 2 episodes, waste his return, and kind of dispatch him. Thankfully, he's going to be an ongoing threat. I did and I didn't like Thrawn in this. I loved Lars Mikkelsen's performance. You know, he's got such a subtlety and understatement to his voice. And a real kind of cold menace belying his very calm demeanour. But again, I don't think the writing of the show services the intellect of the character. I didn't really get tactical genius vibes from a lot of the decisions he was making in this show. Not enough so to do justice to this character's legacy, that's for sure. And I remember saying this in my review of the rather atrocious third season of The Mandalorian, which is that I can't fault Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's love of Star Wars. I think they are absolutely the type of people who should be in charge of this universe. But I don't think as storytellers they've got the writing ability to do a lot of these characters justice. I've found that with Mandalorian, I found that with Boba Fett, and I am finding it now with Ahsoka, where these shows just feel like they are missing a lot of depth and a lot of kind of nuance to the writing because it just isn't there. The cinematography was really beautiful. I loved the kind of vastness and the sparseness that they managed to capture. Again, it felt very samurai-esque, but I think sometimes the emptiness did kind of expose a sort of hollowness to the show. It felt quite slow and stagnant at times, mainly because we were cutting between so many different characters who really weren't being given interesting arcs. But the actual visuals of the show were stunning. The music by Kevin Kleiner, who's, you know, a Clone Wars and Rebels veteran, was absolutely perfect. I loved the theme and the credits theme. The lightsaber combat for the most part was good, and Ahsoka's journey, when given the attention it needed, was mostly good. Redeemed massively by Hayden Christensen. I think this show is going to be remembered for Hayden Christensen because he brought an emotional impact that was completely devoid elsewhere. Whether that was in the flashbacks, whether that was in The World Between Worlds, whether that was his final nod at the end and his kind of contended at peace Force Ghost. I think he really brings the kind of underlying spirituality and the underlying emotional satisfaction that a lot of fans will have gotten from this show. I'm not stoked to see the future of where these storylines pan out, but I am definitely curious. But I know Ahsoka has been quite a divisive one, so please do drop a comment below and let me know what you guys thought of the season. Please also consider liking and subscribing to the channel. That's always a huge help for me. And in the meantime, we'll see you for the next vid.